There should be like 5 or 6 more joining. Good job, Sarah. All right, welcome everyone, and we're going to go ahead and get started. To begin with, we're just going to kind of introduce ourselves. You may know either myself or you may know Sarah, or you may not even know either one of us. So we just thought we'd introduce ourselves so you know who we are. Um, my name is Deborah, and I have been milling flour now for about a year and a half, I think. And I never made sourdough before. I thought it was just way too much work. I've got 5 kids. I was homeschooling all of them at the time. And I'm like, there's no way I can do sourdough. And because I just thought, you have to do all these steps and you're kind of a slave to it. And there's no way I'm going to do that. Um, but when I discovered a very simple way to do it, I was like, oh, wow, yeah, I can do that. And then as I learned all the health benefits of freshly milled flour, putting the two together, I was like, yeah, this is a perfect mix. And I have eliminated all other flour from my home. It's only freshly milled flour in our home now. And we've all adjusted to it. And actually, I think most of my kids prefer it. A son went on a mission trip for a week and he was like, oh, I'm so glad to be home, Mom. It was just garbage we had to eat. It's like, yes, that's what mom wants to hear, that they want that homemade food with the freshly milled flour. So that's a little bit about myself. Sarah, why don't you just kind of introduce yourself and then we'll get started with the recipe and stuff.
Thanks, Deborah. My name's Sarah. Can you guys hear me okay? Yep. Okay, sweet. I am a mom of 5. I have 5 boys, ranging in age from 22 to 9. We're a homeschool family, sent kids to school. We're going back to homeschooling. There's a lot of different things. I've got a couple kids with special needs. We are a foster and adopt family. We are in a foster and adopt family. I started doing freshly milled flour in December of 24, so not super long ago. I learned a lot from Deborah. And the reasons that I started have to do with my kids and some genetic issues and behavioral issues, and just trying to figure out a better way to feed my family. And so we are all still learning, but we've learned a lot. And just learning how to tie together what we're eating and what we're exposed to, and detox and gut health and food, and all these pieces together has been really, really life-changing for my family. And so I am a special ed teacher by trade. I haven't taught in a really long time in a classroom, but um, I just really love to learn. And so as I've been learning, I dig in, like I want the research and I want all the pieces. So as I've been learning, I've just really felt like, I need to share this because I'm seeing what a big, huge difference this makes. So yeah, we would love to just, have some interaction. If you guys have questions, pop them in the chat, or I think there's like a raise your hand piece, something where we're brand new at doing this virtually. We've been sharing these workshops in person since, when did we start doing this, Deborah? I can't even remember, but
I think we've been a year.
yeah, I think it's been about a year, and that's where I learned from Deb about this, and I was like, oh, I really have to do this. And so we're used to doing this in person. This is our third time doing a virtual one. Our second time was last night, so please give us a little grace as we go here. But I would love to know if you are already doing fresh milled flour, maybe just put a 1 in the chat, and then we can like know how much you need to, how much more you need to learn about that, or even just write why you're using fresh milled flour if you are. Um, yeah, just so we can figure that out.
Okay, so in the chat, we had a link for the recipe and the guide. So hopefully you have that in front of you, either digitally or you printed it off. You have that because we will be referring to both of these things. The recipe is the simple sourdough bread that we have. And yeah, the guide is going to answer a lot of the questions as we go along. So I'm going to go through, if you notice on your recipe, it says there's the night before steps. Hopefully you already have some active starter ready to go, because we would have had to do this step last night to be ready to make our bread today. So I think most of you have some active starter on hand, but I'm going to go through that step just to demonstrate what you're going to do. Now, here's my, oh dear, Sarah, that exploded. She just picked that up at my house this morning. Oh dear, it's very active. So I keep my sourdough starter in the fridge at all times. I do not have like all the discard and all of those things, because you'll see people who have like all these jars of discard. What am I supposed to do with it? Because they just leave it on their counter and it gets active and then they have to take some out of it and feed it. I don't do any of that. It is in my fridge all the time. And the beauty of this recipe is we're only going to make active the part that we need. So I can keep it in the fridge when I want to make bread. I know I just take it out. I do this step the night before, and then I have enough to make my loaf, and this goes straight back into the fridge. And I only add to this when I see I've got, my jar is getting low. I need to increase the volume that I have. Then I will feed this straight back in the fridge. Now, when you store this in the fridge, I kept it there for a month or so and never used it. You might see a little bit of a black liquid forming on the top. All that is the alcohols that begin to come out of it. It's been fermenting and the alcohols have come to the top. Just pour that off. It's called hooch. Just pour it off and feed it. It just means it's super hungry. So feed it and you're good to go. If you're going to store it, if you know, I'm not going to be baking for the next couple weeks, make sure it's a really thick paste. I add lots of flour to it. Then it has lots of food and it will survive, no problem. You won't really get that hooch because it has a lot more food for it as it ferments in the fridge really slowly. So that's just some guides of how to simplify keeping your sourdough starter active and not having all the discard and all that stuff. So the step the night before, as I said, I like to do things simple, and it had to be something that I didn't have to spend a lot of time on. So you'll see that this step the night before, literally it takes me 5 minutes. So I'm going to take, it says we're going to take 2 tablespoons of starter. That's about 30 grams. Now I do have a scale. You don't have to use one. You can use those measurements that are on the paper also. And you mix that with 50 grams of water, which is about a quarter cup. And then you'll mix in the flour. And this is exactly the way that you will feed your starter also. So you can do equal parts of starter, water, and flour, unless you're going to leave it and you want it to be really thick, and just add in a bunch more flour so it's really nice and thick. So this is how I'm going to activate this bit. And I just stir it up nicely. You see how it's just a really nice thick paste? This is exactly what we want it to be like. And this is going to sit on the counter then, covered, for overnight. Or maybe you want to prepare it at night. You would do this in the morning, and you basically just need to leave this for about 10 hours, 10 to 12 hours for it to get active. So that's the night before. Hopefully what you guys have is some active starter. So this one I mixed up last night, and you can see how it's very bubbly and ready to go. If you did that last night, you're going to need, or if you have active starter, because now we're on the next morning step of our recipe. Okay, as you're following along, the next morning. So if you just have a jar of active starter, you're going to need to have about 130 grams of that starter in your bowl right now. So if you have a scale, it's going to be easier. If you don't, I don't know, about half a cup, that's it, of starter, it's going to go into your bowl. All right. And then to this, we're going to be adding the water. And it calls for 1 3/4 cup water, or 400 grams. So again, it makes it simple with a scale, but you don't have to. You can just use measuring cups and it'll be okay. So mixing in that water. Oh. And I should also mention, the recipe does say filtered water. City water, with the treatment things that they put into it, it does react differently with sourdough. So filtered water is best, but don't let that stop you. If you only have access to your tap water, it'll still work. But Filtered water is best. So mixing that in the water. And then we'll add the flour. Now, if you are just using your regular flour, you can do that, or I'm going to be grinding the flour. I grind it right before I use it. And as we let this rest, I'll kind of explain a little bit more about why it's so important to use freshly milled flour and the benefits of it, but you grind it and then you bake with it right away. Because as soon as we grind it, think like an avocado, it's going to begin to oxidize. And those nutrients are going to be able to begin to break down. So that's why we grind it and use it. So we could have been grinding this. So in the morning when we're doing this, you could be grinding it. And while that's grinding, you're mixing this up. Like this step literally is going to take 5 minutes or less. Super easy. I'm going to be using a combination of hard red wheat and hard white wheat. I like the flavor combination of them. If I only had one that I was going to choose, I would just go with a hard white. The flavor of each of these, the hard white is similar in taste to what you would find with bread from the store. Hard red is a little bit nuttier flavor, I would say, but when you combine them, I do 1/3 hard red, 2/3 hard white, and I like the flavor that gives, but it's just personal preference. But you do want to make sure you're using hard wheat when you're doing bread, and that's information is on the guide that you have. It just has a higher protein in it, and the protein in it is what, when it gets wet, is what forms those gluten structures. That's all gluten is. It's the proteins in wheat. When they get wet, they form these stretchy substances, and that's gluten. So you want a higher protein that's going to give you a better gluten structures for your bread. I do also use soft white wheat, and this is what I'm using for all my cookies and muffins and pancakes, things that I'm using baking powder, baking soda. So these are the main grains that I'm using on a regular basis. But you don't want to use soft in bread, just your hard wheat. So I'm going to go ahead and mill it. And on the guide paper that you have, I have listed out some different kinds of mills that are available. I have the Nutrimill Classic. I think you can see that there. Maybe I'll move it over a little bit. You can see it's a all-enclosed mill. The flour comes down into a canister there, and it's an impact mill basically. You can have a stone mill. They're nice wooden boxes. They look really pretty, and they have like a spout that the flour comes out of. They are much more of an investment. I liked this one that it was all contained. I chose this one just for the budget friendliness of it also, but it's just mainly a preference. Do you really want the stone mill, or is an impact one option? Nutrimill has the Classic, and they also have the Nutrimill Impact. Nutrimill Impact is a smaller mill, and I would only recommend that for someone who is like baking for 1-2 people, maybe. You're not going to be grinding a large volume of flour. It tends to overheat. You have to clean it out really well all the time. So it's meant for a small use, really. If you plan to be grinding flour for a family or large volumes, definitely go with something like the Nutrimill Classic. Wonder Mill is another one that I would highly recommend. That is an option. If you do choose to go purchasing one from Nutrimill, there is a code you can save $20 off of that mill, purchasing it through nutrimill.com. So just a little savings if you do decide to invest in one. And Evelyn, I'll figure out where in Canada is best place to get those and pass that along to you, because that's mainly in the States. So we're going to go ahead and grind this, and you'll see just how quickly it will grind. All the flour is here, and there we go. That quickly, we have the flour that we're going to be using. So we're adding in 500 grams of flour, which is like 4 cups of flour if you're using cup measurements. And then we're just going to mix this up, getting all the flour incorporated into it. It's going to be a shaggy, kind of rough dough that you're going to have. It's pretty good. So you can see it's pretty shaggy. It's not nice and smooth or anything. So what we're going to do with freshly milled flour, it's important to now let this sit and rest and let the bran and the germs soften. Because as it begins to rise and those gluten structures begin to form, we don't want that bran and germ to be able to cut those gluten structures. We want them to soften nicely. So this is called I think it's like autolyse is how you say it. And so it's just allowing all of that flour to absorb the water. And we're going to let this sit now. So you got up in the morning, you spent 5 minutes doing this. You set it aside now. And sorry, we are going to get the salt ready before we go get ready for our day. For the salt mixture, I like to allow the salt to begin to dissolve. So I put 2 tablespoons of water, or 25 grams, in a container, adding in 10 grams of salt. And then just mixing that up a little bit. And then we can allow that to sit and begin to dissolve while this is absorbing the water. So you set that aside and you get ready for your day. And then we'll chat a little bit here, and then we'll come back and we'll mix that salt in together and we'll get the rest of the steps. Now, the salt you use is also important. I had a friend who decided to just use the regular table salt, iodized table salt. She's like, why does my bread taste funny? That salt reacts differently in your bread. And basically what they've done to the flour, they've kind of done to salt also. The best salt that I can recommend is Redmond's Real Salt. It has minerals in it, the nutrients we need in this salt. And if you don't have access to this, maybe like a Celtic sea salt or a Himalayan pink salt, something that is not a washed out iodized salt. So this is a good option if you're looking for a healthy salt, Redmond's Real Salt, or just a pink Himalayan, something that's a clean nutrient or source of minerals in your salt. Okay, so while our flour is absorbing all that water and stuff, let's chat about why are we grinding our own flour? Like, why is it so important, and why am I so passionate about teaching this. And so to do that, I like to give kind of a little history lesson of what has happened with our flour. So let's think back to the late 1800s, to the 1800s. You would have grown your wheat, taken it to the local miller. He would grind that for you. You would come home and bake with it. Or you might have had a mill at your own home. And that was just how you did it. You ground your flour and you baked with it. And communities were built up around where the local millers were. Then in the early 1900s, we get the invention of the steel rolling mills. Everyone thought this is fantastic. Now, white flour is the flour for everyone. It used to be the flour just for the rich because they couldn't afford to sift out all that bran and the germ and lose all of that volume in the flour. And now it became the flour of the rich, and everyone could have those light and fluffy baked goods, and everyone thought this was fantastic. The bran and the germ part of the wheat went to the animal market. So you can see here, you've got the whole wheat, and they took out all these parts. So the bran and the germ, the oil came out, and all you're left with is the starch, the endosperm. That's what you're left with. And so this was the white flour. They then, in about the 1950s, they began to say, whoa, there's these health issues. They were pellagra, beriberi, and anemia. And these were B vitamin deficiencies. It was diseases that had dysentery, so GI discomfort. It was mental struggles. It was skin issues. So they could trace all of these things back to the flour. And all of those nutrients that they had pulled out of the flour by taking out the bran and the germ and the oils that are naturally in the flour. They said, you got to put this back in. We need those nutrients back in so that we can help these people we can stop these diseases. And they were not going to put them back in because they were making so much money with the animal market. They said, we will put 4 of those vitamins back in. So they put a synthetic form of these B vitamins back into the flour. There we go. We have enriched flour. Problem solved. But then, a few years later, they could trace birth defects to the lack of folic acid. God put folic acid, a natural form of folic acid, into wheat that we can use and need. That was taken out of it by taking this out of the flour. Birth defects came. You got to put that back in. So they put a synthetic form of folic acid into our flour. That's the flour, almost. That's the enriched flour. But then if you have the bleached, it wasn't enough for them just to enrich it. The oil, there was like residue oil in the flour. And so they decided to bleach it because there was the discoloration of the white flour. So you get bleached, enriched flour, and that's what's on the shelf today. So when people tell me, oh, I have a gluten intolerance, or I have to be gluten-free because it gives me all these issues, you don't necessarily have a gluten intolerance, you have a dead flour intolerance. You need to be eating flour the way God designed it, with all of this together. God never designed for us to just eat this. It was all of it together. And eating grain as a whole grain, it satisfies you. It gives you all those nutrients. 40 of the 44 nutrients we need are in grain. So it gives us all of that. It is the most nutrient-dense source of vitamin E that there is. And vitamin E helps fight viruses. There's so many stories out there of people who have warts, and warts is a virus that vitamin E helps to fight. And simply by eating bread, people have seen their warts go away. My daughter is one of them. So it's because it has all of that goodness in there. We were designed to eat bread. People that struggle with constipation, they need the fiber and all of this together, not just the white flour. So yes, stay away, go gluten-free and stay away from the garbage in the stores, but we need to be eating these 3 servings a day of whole grains, giving us all those nutrients that we need. And there's a reason when Jesus says, I am the bread of life, I satisfy, because this bread satisfies. And when they would have heard that, like, oh yeah, that makes sense, because we eat this bread, which would have been like sourdough bread, that they would have had. And they would be, oh yeah, we stay full. I can have a slice of sourdough bread for lunch and I am sustained all afternoon. And then, I typically have something for breakfast and then a slice of bread for lunch. And so there's like some form of grain at every meal. And I will have muffins all the time in my house. And my kids, that's a quick breakfast. They'll grab 2 or 3 muffins. And I'm like, yes, please take them. Now I'm using healthier honey. I'm using healthier sweeteners, such as coconut sugar, honey, maple syrup, or I do use some organic cane sugar in them. But it's giving them that energy that they need and that's fuel that we need to be consuming. So yes, all things freshly milled are a huge step forward from store-bought flour. Sourdough is even one step further because it's fermented. And by fermenting those grains, it's even easier on your digestive tract. So if you're someone who has struggled with a lot of digestive issues, you've stayed away from gluten, I would say start with sourdough freshly milled flour. And even if wheat is a struggle for you, go with more of an ancient grain, such as einkorn is an option. I think that is probably the most gentlest. It's a very, very ancient form of wheat. It is a little bit different to work with, but that would be a recommendation. And if you want help with that, I can help you kind of guide you in how to use that. But yes, we have helped at least 4 or 5 people who have been gluten-free for years. And we had one lady come to one of our workshops and she was down to just a handful of food she could eat. She had went to Easter dinner with her family and could have nothing. And she was so miserable. She had tried everything. And as we're explaining the history of flour and, all that they've done to it, she's like, so you're telling me that I could eat this? We're like, yeah, we really believe you could. She's like, well, give me a bite. I want to try this. She said, I'll know within 20 minutes if this is going to affect me. So she took a bite of, I don't know what we had that day, bagel or bread, something that we had there. She went and she enjoyed it right away. And about half an hour later, she's like, guys, I am feeling fine. When we baked the bread, had it in the oven, came out, she's like, give me a slice of that. I think I can do this. And this is after so many years of being gluten-free. Now, she did add in a quality probiotic that had digestive enzymes and antifungal in it to help with a lot of that junk buildup that she also had going on. She took an anti-inflammatory, a natural anti-inflammatory that helps also. But she's eating bread now. She's making bread. Another friend, gluten-free for so many years, kind of the same story. And she is loving bread. And yes, she's had kind of some ups and downs because we can detox from real bread also. Because when we start flooding our body with all this goodness, they're like, whoa, and the junk is, starts screaming, and we can have different forms of detox. And she did go through some of that, but she stuck with it, pushed through, and just slowly continued enjoying a little bit of bread every day. And now she's doing so good, but she still had to stick just with the sourdough bread, just because that is more gentle on your system. So that is why I am so passionate about it. I cannot even bring myself to buying anything in the store. One time I was like, okay, maybe just the convenience. I'll just buy a package of tortilla for tacos one night. I looked at the store and I looked at the ingredients and I was like, nope, I can't do it. I can't do it. I know it takes me like 20 minutes to make these at home. I can spare 20 minutes and make them at home. So yeah, even things, tortillas, bagels, cookies, muffins, everything I'm doing now. I found a sandwich bread recipe that is very similar to store-bought bread that everyone in my family now takes for sandwiches, in school lunches, work lunches, things like that. So yeah, it is just kind of do one thing at a time. If you are going to switch over, don't just kind of all in. I would say a gradual swap is better. I did have some organic white flour in the house and the kids were like, okay, we're going to do half and half. And they did that for a while. And I said, I'm not going to restock it. So when it's gone, it's gone. And that was kind of allowing them that gentle transition to it. And then find good recipes that are meant for freshly milled flour. The books that I highly recommend, if you don't have them already and you're really interested in learning, Sue Becker's book, the Home Ground Flour book, is excellent. It has a lot of information in it. And then it also has wonderful collection of recipes. And a lot of hers also have more natural sweeteners in them, which I like also. So that's a good one. And then this one, the Fresh Milled Flour Cookbook, is an excellent one. My kids have loved almost every recipe in here. Now, she does not, her recipes call for like white sugar and brown sugar. So I've adapted them with organic cane sugar, coconut sugar, that kind of thing. But there's a lot of really good recipes in here also for snacks, bread, all the things. So these are some books that I would recommend. I've also put together a snack guide. I've got 25 different healthy snacks. If you don't have that yet, just let me know and I can pass that along. It uses freshly milled flour and healthy sweeteners also, so that's an option. Just to, slowly swap things out and improve the health of your family. So, Sarah, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Deborah. We do have a question in the chat. She's asking, she's curious if it's possible to use sourdough and some active yeast in a loaf. Would that have similar health benefits? Have you tried that?
I have not tried that. I think if you're using freshly milled flour, my opinion is all of them, like everything you make is going to be so much better. So even if you're adding a little bit of yeast into your sourdough using freshly milled flour, I'd say go for it. If that's going to give you a better rise of your sourdough. If you're, trying to be really gentle on your digestive system and you have to, you've got a lot of healing that has to take place, then maybe, yeah, stay away from the yeast for now and stick just with sourdough. But if that's not an issue for you, go for it and add in that yeast. I like how someone's saying with the Ezekiel flour. Yes, I love that mixture. And I've made brownies with it, cookies with it. I made brownies with, for those of you who don't know what the Ezekiel mixture is, there's the verse in Ezekiel that talks about different grains and beans, making it as a mixture. So it's spelt, barley, wheat, and then there's kidney beans, lentils, navy beans, is a whole collection of them. So you put all that together and I grind it in my mill and I made brownies with it. And I took it to my preschool Sunday school class and they all ate it. They had no clue what they were eating and they all ate it. So if people don't know what they're eating, yeah, they'll enjoy it.
That's great. Awesome. Yeah. So, yeah, I started doing this. I'm going to just share a little bit of my story while we're letting things auto lace. But yeah, I started doing this. Well, first I started doing some gut health stuff because my health was getting so bad and the doctors just kept pouring on and pouring on and pouring on so many more prescriptions and more problems and more side effects and all the things. And I was 47 years old and had 5 kids and literally just thought my life was going to end because everything was in the red, all the labs, all the things. And so I started doing some research on my own and really saw the benefit of gut health and gut microbiome. You can literally Google gut health and put in something like a disease or a problem, and it'll show you all the science that's behind it. But doctors are not trained on this. And so I very reluctantly and skeptically said yes to trying some gut health stuff. I was like, oh, I'm not spending all that money on vitamins. I'm not spending all that money on probiotics when I can get it at, Walmart or whatever. And so switched to some higher quality and saw immediate results. I had open sores that began to close that had not closed in months of trying with doctors. I had I had 3 autoimmune diseases diagnosed in a year. And the inflammation started going down. My pain levels started going down. My health started turning around. My energy started increasing. All of these things. And so many other things. Started sleeping again, which hadn't happened in several years, that I couldn't sleep more than 30 minutes at a time. And saw my health really start to take a turn, and started seeing some weight loss eventually. I actually wanted weight loss, but it took about 7 months before I actually lost a pound. But people thought that I had lost significant amounts of weight because I had lost so much inflammation. And so seeing that gut health piece. And then as I'm raising my kids, we adopted two out of foster care and they have some fetal alcohol and some other things. We were getting some testing done. And both of them uh, tested positive for an MTHFR gene mutation. And I can't tell you what that stands for because I'm not a scientist, but basically what I began to learn from our psychiatrist, who is very much into natural stuff as well. She began to teach me how folic acid is not found anywhere on the planet naturally. It's all just a chemical that was created in a lab. Folate is natural, what God created. And everything's enriched with folic acid, everything. Cereals and breads and grains, all of the grains in the US are sprayed with folic acid to help us with what's missing in actual flour. That's why, because of all the diseases that were coming. And so folic acid is not something any of us really naturally would come across, but if you have this MTHFR gene mutation, it's a neurotoxin. And I had these kids with these massive, like very extreme behaviors, learning disabilities, raging issues, like just so many pieces. And I thought, we can't eat anything at the store. I don't know what to do. And I am not naturally a baker. I don't enjoy it. It's not like I just really want to bake and feel better. To me, it's like, oh, I gotta bake because, so it's just more work to me. And so as I began to learn, I was like, I can't buy bread. Like knowing that it's literally poisoning their brains. How do I keep going with that, right? Um, and so I started using organic King Arthur unbleached flour, which is better than buying bread and making bread in my bread maker. But I tried probably 20 recipes, and I'm not exaggerating, and none of them were great. And the kids did not enjoy the bread. My husband was like, "Man, if you make toast with this, it's like a crouton, like, it just was not good." And so I'm like, okay, well, they're not eating the bread, so what's the point, right? And as I learned with Deborah, I thought, well, it's a lot of money to invest in a mill, and I don't know if I can do this, and I don't know if I can, so the baby steps was a really big piece for me. And so my mother-in-law bought me a mill for Christmas and early. She got it at Thanksgiving during Black Friday, I think. And so I started in the early December. And it took me a while to realize, but we looked back at my son's case notes with his therapist, and we saw a marked difference in his behavior towards the third week or so of December. Marked difference, like night and day turnaround. And at the time, I was like, oh, maybe he's maturing. Maybe he's, we're finally getting a reprieve a little bit. Like, and so as time went on, we realized like this behavior has almost disappeared. His ragey behavior, his just physical attacking type things. It was really extreme. And my other son began to learn, and his testing at school was showing that he was learning at a pace he had never learned, and he was in seventh grade. So they were like, wow, what are you doing? It was the flour. It was me doing fresh milled flour and taking away all the things in our home. And I shouldn't say all, most of the things in our home that contained this folic acid and these processed things. Another part of MTHFR is that their bodies can't detox properly. And so all of these synthetic chemicals that are in our foods and processed and all of the, glyphosate, I was trying to pull things out that had all those things. Those are toxins to all of us. But if you have this gene mutation, you're not detoxing properly. And so it's just staying in your system and rotating through your bloodstream and getting deposited in different parts of your body. And so we saw a huge change with those things when we switched to the fresh milled flour. My youngest son, who is biological, got tested eventually because I was curious, and he also has it, not as extreme as his other brothers, but and so we're already doing some gut health things, switching the foods. We're seeing just massive increase in learning, in appropriate behavior, being able to think through things, that type of thing. The gut health piece, though, for my youngest son has been a really big deal. He was born really, I was almost 41 when I birthed him, and he inherited my really unhealthy gut. And so, because that's what happens. And he was born with really severe allergies, asthma, eczema, all over his body. And as I began to heal, realizing like my allergies disappearing, I didn't know that was going to be a part of this. And then wondering if it could help him. At 5 years old, they were like, he's allergic to everything. We need to start allergy shots for the next 5 years. I'm like, you don't want to put all that stuff in your baby, right? And so I was like, well, it can't hurt. And so I just started him on the probiotic that I was taking. And the difference with the probiotic is that it has antifungals in it as well and digestive enzymes. So it helps heal the digestive system. It helps kill candida and it helps grow healthy probiotics, bacteria in your gut. And your gut, when your gut is healthy, your body's functioning properly. And so, about 6 weeks after he started that, I noticed that he had smooth skin on his back. And I don't remember feeling a time when he didn't feel scaly. And it really shocked me because I didn't expect that from him, but it was all gut related. And now knowing that your skin is really your one of your main detox pathways, and it's kind of a default one. If you can't get toxins out through your pee or your poop or like other ways, it's going to come out of your skin. And it made sense because one of my autoimmune things is a skin thing. And so my skin was clearing up. It made sense that this was helping him. And we noticed like we were doing nebulizer treatments several times a week, and it had gone down to, it's been months we haven't done one. He only really needs them now when he's got a virus. So it is really a game changer for your whole health. And really, you can't out supplement a bad diet, and you almost can't in our world today eat enough healthy food to make up for what your body needs these days because our soil is toxic, our air is toxic, like the world is falling apart really. And not saying like any weird stuff, but I'm just saying like to get the nutrients you need is very, very difficult in the foods that are grown today. There have been some studies out there that show if you took an orange from 1950 and you took an orange from today and compared the nutritional value of them, it has gone down so significantly to just a small percentage of what it used to be. That's very telling. So what is in our food? So to get these nutrients, it's almost like they have to be both and. And I think that's where I was struggling because I would go on these diets and do these like really massive, like, okay, I'm gonna eat super clean and all the things, and I would feel better but I still couldn't get past like these health issues because it wasn't enough to support my body and what it actually needed until I added in quality supplements, high quality, and not just buying over the grocery store. The other thing I want to go back real quick to that folic acid piece that I wanted to say is that multivitamins almost all have folic acid in a really junky form of folate. It's cyanocobalamin or B12 is a really junky form. And so those are chemicals, synthetic, that your body can't really process well. And my children's vitamins that I've been taking vitamins my whole life. I had my kids on vitamins their whole life. Like all of that was just junky vitamins. And so finding a high quality vitamin can be a game changer for you. If you guys have questions, I will definitely pop in here and look at those too. But Deborah, do you have anything you want to share to get along with that?
Well, yeah, just like why I was, I was trying to address the gut health piece first is kind of how I started in my journey. Um, I was just feeling absolutely miserable. We had been living in Haiti for 20 years and then moved back to the States, and my health was a mess. And I had 3 UTIs within 6 months. So that's 3 rounds of antibiotics. And I was just reading yesterday how even just 1 round of antibiotic can, you have like a 24% chance of depression. Like it just increases all your mental health struggles and like that. So I was on my 3rd round of antibiotics in 6 months, and it was dark. It was bad. And I had tried everything. I had tried just getting probiotics off Amazon. I had tried vitamins off Amazon, just trying to the um, cheap route. But when a friend shared with me about these probiotics, I was like, maybe there's a chance. Maybe this is what's going to be the key. And so I started while I was on that third round of antibiotics. I have not had an infection since. And it my health has completely changed. And as it began to change, now it didn't happen overnight. This was like a year long natural healing. And I eat really well. If you know me, I live on a farm. I have my own animals. I have a huge garden. I try and make everything from scratch. And that's how I lived even when we were overseas, just doing everything I could to eat as healthy as possible. And yet still I was struggling. So putting these extra supplements in made a big difference. And then when I learned about fresh milk flour, I was like, it's a no-brainer. I have to take that next step. I was actually, when they talk about all the pieces coming out of the flour in Haiti, I would buy the white flour because you could buy that from the flour mill, but then you could also buy the animal feed. It was for pig food, and it was all the bran and the germ and the chaff and everything was in there. I would sift out just the fine stuff so I wasn't getting the stalks and all of that. We would give that to our chickens, and I would put it back into my bread.
Hmm.
So that's what I was doing before I had access to wheat and things like that. So I kind of knew, but yet this is so much better because it has all the oils and all of that. So I was trying everything I could. But now, even just seeing changes in the behavior of my kids, and also my grocery budget, I spend way less now than I used to. Because I'm satisfied. If I'm making muffins and cookies and bread, all of the things, and that is satisfying them. I used to buy different snacks like granola bars and things like that for their lunches when they would go to work during the summer. I have one that's in school, and I would have just different snacks. I don't buy any of that anymore. Nothing. All I'm buying is apples and oranges, bananas, and then making everything else. And I'm spending significantly less than I did before. So if you're thinking, I don't know if I can afford a meal, look at the cost savings of what you will be saving by having food that actually sustains. And Sarah, I loved how you shared last night in our workshop how for you, the cost that you were spending on medical things and thinking, oh, I don't think I can afford these quality supplements, but then looking at over a year, how much you saved in medical expenses.
Yeah, we saved 2/3 from one year to the next, from the time I started these in like November, and then the following year we were doing our taxes and putting in the medical stuff. It was a third of what we had spent the year before. That blew my mind. So we were actually saving money. And the cravings that I had for like, I was drinking diet soda all the time and like sneaking sugar constantly and chocolate and like everybody's got their stash, right? I don't have a stash anymore. I had a stash for 20, 30 years because like I needed it. It was my survival. That's the candida in my gut screaming for more food so it can live. And candida is toxic to your body. And so, most of us have, I mean, all of us have it in there. The question is how overgrown it is. So, yes, it will save you money. But I do want to get to some of the questions, Deborah. Someone asked, what probiotic do I like? Therese, I use Plexus products. They are very clean and they are engineered to work together in and support one another. And so I love that they put several things into one. So instead of buying I've seen a naturopath and they have buy this and buy this and buy this and buy this and buy this. And then you've got, $150. They'll have it into one product combined or into three products combined or something like that. So, and I was talking to my friend last night on our way home, and that's what she's looking at. Like she buys so many from her naturopath. What I didn't say, and I want to say too, real quick, is that I went to a naturopath eventually because when I went back to my doctor 6 months after doing this, she looked at my blood work and was like, what are you doing? How are you doing this? And she was so confused. And I felt like every time I went to the doctor, I was educating her. And I thought, why am I paying her to educate her on my health? That was frustrating to me. And she just didn't know what she didn't know. And it's not her fault. She had tried really hard. But so I ended up at a naturopath and she said, I didn't know you before, but I'm looking at your labs from before. And what I see there is almost everything in like a danger zone that I see like a woman who is in desperation, probably wasn't sleeping at all, was very much in pain and inflamed, and you were on a very fast track to a quick grave, is what she told me. And that scares me. And she said, and now you've got one thing that's not in the green. Everything else is good. I was able to get off of 12 of my 16 prescriptions. That's huge. I am diabetic, so I still have to take some. But it has helped me so much. And so those are the probiotics that I have found to be life-changing for me. And I use a lot of their products because they have helped me so much. Is there a reason not to use stainless steel bowls for mixing the dough? Deborah, you want to take that one?
Sure. Yeah. There is something that within the metal, it reacts with the sourdough yeast. And so I did an experiment once where I had a glass bowl, a plastic bowl, and a stainless steel bowl. It was the same dough, everything. The stainless steel bowl barely even rose. The glass bowl rose the fastest, and the plastic one was in the middle. So last night someone said it could be that the glass kind of helps as an insulator, so it stays warmer, which might be why it ferments faster. But if I'm doing a double batch of bread, I'll use a glass bowl and a plastic one, knowing that I can bake the glass one first, and then when that one's done, the plastic one will be ready. But yeah, stay away from the stainless steel. It reacts with the sourdough and won't rise well.
Yep. And then Sheila asked what for the blood tests, which one tests for the MTHFR? Great question. We had gene site testing done. It's GE, I'll put it in the chat, but it's just a cheek swab and it's very expensive and most insurance won't pay for it, but they do have a scholarship or whatever help thing. And so we ended up paying $100 out of pocket for a several $1,000 test. Let me say this though. We were looking for reasons. Um, we were looking for reasons for like why the kids were struggling so much because we didn't have a lot of history with them. And that's why we did it. The science out there right now is pointing to about an estimation of 60% of Americans have an MTHFR gene mutation. So the likelihood is, and especially this generation of like younger than us, okay? What's causing gene mutations? We can go in a whole like rabbit hole with that. I don't know. But um the likelihood is that you have a good chance or your kids have a good chance that they have this issue. And it causes issues. And I think a lot of it might be from the food. And so my son, who had a lot of the rage issues, he went to camp this summer and came home and started raging. And we hadn't seen it in several months. And we were like, what happened? Like what is going on? I thought maybe he's just tired, maybe he's just and then he started talking to me about all the buckets of cereal that he had been eating at camp. And then we haven't had cereal in our house for almost a year. And that just proved to me right there, like that is why we don't do that anymore. Was it easy at first? No. And I kind of just like said, I'm done buying cereal. I'm done buying like processed food almost completely. I had to figure out a good way to do breakfast in the morning. Granola and yogurt are kind of a go-to. I make some yogurt. It's not the best quality, probably as far as, but it's better than all the like additives that are in it. I'm making it at home. And so, but the granola I'm making from organic stuff, like I realized I had to buy all of the grains organic for them because otherwise they have glyphosate and they can't detox that. And they've been sprayed with folic acid most likely, and they can't detox that. And so just kind of like it was hard at first. The kids threw a big fit. There's nothing to eat. I'm dying, blah, blah, blah. But now they're like, can I have an apple? Mom, can I grab a cookie? Because guess what? I make my cookies with fresh milled flour, right? I keep a bag of my fresh milled flour, my soft in the freezer so they can my one little guy likes to bake and so he'll just bake. He just made some cookies the other day. He knows where to go find the flour. So yeah, it is worth it. And if you can't afford the test, just live as if you might have it because it's not going to hurt you to live that way. Because really, should any of us be eating folic acid? That's a good question.
Yeah. Sarah, you referenced it, but on the back of your guide, it's how to store your grains. And if you don't have a mill yet, but yet you have a friend who does, you can get flour and then just store it in your freezer. And that will retain those nutrients because as soon as the grain is ground up, the nutrients begin to break down. So if you grind some and you want to store it in the freezer. Otherwise, if you just have grains, storing them in I just have mine in these glass jars or a 5-gallon pail I store it in. You just want something that keeps the moisture out, a nice, cool, dark place to store your grains. And grains are very storable. You can store them for many years. It's just as soon as you grind it, then you have to either store it in the freezer or use it. So, okay, I think our bread should be ready to go. I do see this question, why aren't the sourdough whisks made of metal? Yes. You know, I'm using a metal spoon and that's okay. I think it's something to do with it sitting in that metal for several hours. But just kind of putting a little bit of metal through it is totally fine. Some people are purists and they will only use like a wooden spoon or things like that. But I don't think an actual just mixing it is going to impact it. It's just sitting in that mixing bowl that makes the difference. Okay, so now we're going to take our salt because we let it sit. And if you only had in your morning, you only had 30 minutes, that would be okay. Sometimes I'd even let this sit for 2 hours and that's okay too. You make this adjust to your schedule. It doesn't control you, is kind of my philosophy. So now you're just going to pour that in. And now we get to pretend that we're back in kindergarten and we're going to play with some Play-Doh. Get your hands in here and we're going to knead this up. Mixing that salt all in. So if you had a busy day and you don't have time for all the stretch and folds and things like that, because you'll notice that that is the next step on our recipe. Steps 6 and 7 say to pull and fold the dough in the bowl, and cover, and then repeat that every 30 to 60 minutes. You can do that if you have time and you're at home. And you might get a little bit fluffier bread, but if you don't have time, it's still going to turn out. I just knead this for a couple minutes, and then I put the lid on the bowl and walk away, and it's okay. So you're just mixing it all in. And there's no right or wrong way on how to knead this. You're just encouraging that gluten structure to form is what we're doing by kind of just mixing this in. And you can see too how when you're using freshly milled flour, it's not a sticky dough. Because of the oils that are in the flour, help it to not be super, super sticky. And if you find that it is sticking to you, the best thing to do is just make your hands damp, and that will help it not to stick. You don't necessarily have to add more flour to it. Yeah, you just mix it up and you let it sit. So now you would let this sit for 4 to 6 hours. Freshly milled flour does ferment faster. So if you're used to using just store-bought flour, that is going to ferment slower, and you often would do a slow fermentation in the fridge overnight. Whereas with this, you don't have to. Literally, you can just let this sit now and go on with your day. When you come back home, after being gone work every day, all day, then you can bake it. Like, it's that simple. If you are going to be gone for a while, so last night, I wanted to show you what it's going to look like in a few hours. This one I mixed up last night. And after I let it sit for about an hour, I put it in the fridge because I wanted it to ferment slower. Because I knew I did not want to stay up and bake it last night. Again, this sourdough comes to my schedule, not me to it. So this morning, I took it out of the fridge probably around 11:30-ish, just to let it warm up a little bit. And now I'm going to bake it this afternoon. So let me show you what you're going to be doing. I'll actually demonstrate that stretch and fold so you can see what you would be doing if you choose to. You're basically going to go in on the side of your bowl and you're going to just pull it up and fold it over. You're just stretching it up and folding it over. And you would go around your bowl that way, doing it every 30 to 60 minutes, it says. And you could do that a couple times. Again, that is the optional step. If you have time, want to do it, you might see a little bit better rise in it. So when you're ready to bake it, you can, at this step, you could put it into a loaf pan, or we can put it into a Dutch oven, but we have to shape it first. We're trying to create some good surface tension on this loaf of bread because that is going to give it better rise by creating that tension. So I like to cup my hands together and pull it toward me. And kind of, it's tucking in underneath so that it's forming that nice surface tension on the top. And we're getting a nice round loaf. Now, you can cook this in a Dutch oven. You can use loaf pans. You can use a pizza stone. Any of those options are going to work. With a Dutch oven or with 2 loaf pans, for example, you could have one and then a lid on it. So your Dutch oven, you have a lid. You could use 2 loaf pans, putting one on top. My mom actually likes to use just her glass casserole dish and puts a lid on top of it. That works for her. But you do want to have something with a lid. If you don't, on the bottom of your recipe, there is a note. It says if you don't have a Dutch oven, or maybe you don't have 2 loaf pans, that one can be a lid for it. Instead, what you can do is you're going to make your entire oven like a Dutch oven. So you can make this loaf, set it on a pizza stone or on a cookie sheet or something like that. Putting in a 9x13 pan on the bottom rack of your oven first. As you're preheating your oven, your entire oven is going to become like a Dutch oven. Then, when you put your loaf in, you keep that water in there at that high temperature. So we're going to cook it at 480 degrees for 20 minutes. That water is in there. Then when we lower the temperature to 450 degrees, we're going to take that water out, which is similar to taking the lid off of our Dutch oven is what the recipe is. So you can still bake it even if you don't have a container that has a lid. The purpose of the lid is just to keep that humidity inside, keep all that moisture in there. So instead, we're making our entire oven that way. So don't let a lack of a Dutch oven or things like that stop you from making this. So that is a way that you can do it. The other trick that I've found is I do use a Dutch oven, and I was really struggling with the bottoms of my loaves burning. So what I do is I put a baking sheet, a cookie sheet, underneath on the rack below my Dutch oven, and that's enough of a heat shield that I don't struggle with the bottoms of my loaves burning anymore. So I tried all kinds of things, and this was the simplest way, just putting a cookie sheet underneath it, underneath the Dutch oven. You'll notice that you do this bench rest step with your bread. It's going to kind of relax. So while the oven is preheating, every few minutes, I'm going to come back and I'm going to reshape it, kind of training it to hold its shape. Now, if I was using a loaf pan, at this point, I could just set it in the loaf pan and let it rise just a little bit while the oven is preheating. I do recommend also that you use parchment paper or a bread sling. I have a silicone bread sling that I use to bake mine with. Something because it's going to stick to the bottom of your pans really badly. Another option is if you have cast iron. I use lard on cast iron pans and then it comes out, but it is a sticky dough, so just be aware of that. So parchment paper or a silicone bread sling would be a good option. And you do have to score it in some way. Yes, you could get all fancy and do, a friend does like wheat things, what it turns out to look like on the top of it, which is great, but you do have to do something. I literally just do 3 lines or maybe an X on it. That's just telling it where the gases can release. If you don't, it's going to get creative. And it might, have this side popping up or whatever. It's going to find a way to allow those gases to release. So by scoring it, you're just saying, hey, this is where the gases can be released from. So there is a purpose to it. You can make it pretty or you can make it functional. It's totally up to you. So any questions on making the bread and do you feel confident that yes, you got this, you could do it again? Any questions? Yes, Evelyn. You can unmute and ask your question.
Hi. Yeah, I think it's just easier. So for
Yeah.
me, because I don't have a mill and I don't have all of that yet, I am using organic whole grain stone ground wheat flour. So the rules for me for letting it sit to rise, are they a little different, I think you were mentioning? Or
Okay.
I guess let
I
it sit for
think
6 hours?
it should be similar because that is more like your like the white flour sourdough bread. Yeah,
Okay.
I think we included in the guide. There is a simple sourdough bread using store-bought flour, which is what
Oh,
you
perfect.
have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm. I did mention for you to add in a little bit of oil and a little bit of like honey. Yours will be fine. But next time, if yours doesn't turn out super good, you can add in because it doesn't have the oils that freshly milled flour does. So you can
Okay.
add in oil and a little bit of honey, and that will help it rise better next
Perfect.
time. But this is a recipe that is the same steps that we just did, but using store-bought flour and how you can do it with that.
Okay, perfect.
So did I understand that you're saying we don't need to stretch and fold? Correct. If you don't have time and you don't want to, you don't have to. If you want to, great. Like it will possibly. I did one where I stretch and fold it I set a timer and every 30 minutes I was stretching and folding it. And then another one where I just left it. Once they baked, I couldn't tell the difference. So it's just a personal preference. Some people do get a little bit better oven spring. They've done that stretch and fold, but you don't have to. No.
I think
Any
I'm at a
other?
point right now where I want to kind of like um experiment a little bit and use, like somebody said, some sourdough with the yeast and see if there's a better like rise. My kids don't love the sourdough because it is so dense. And so yeah, it's different. I do make fresh milled flour yeast bread. And I do add, we don't have gluten issues, but I do add vital wheat gluten and use eggs instead of sunflower lecithin. And it is super soft and it just like they love it. We eat so much of it. And I make about 6 loaves at a time. I have a Bosch mixer now and I can do 6 loaves of it in there and then freeze them and just pull one out at a time and they are just as soft as if I just baked them. It's really quite surprising to me that they don't get gross and freezer burned in there. So I'm kind of curious to see if I can kind of make the sourdough, just maybe even add some sourdough to my yeast bread and see just to get some of that, like a little bit more of the benefit of sourdough, right? Just kind of play around with it. Bread is bread, right? It's still gonna, here's the thing. If you mess it up really badly, just cut it into croutons. Like you can make breadcrumbs. Like you can still use this stuff, right? And you're still going to get the benefits and the health from it if you mess it up. And honestly, how many times have you tried a new recipe in your life or baking or cooking or whatever and been like, yeah, I'm not doing that one again, right? You're just going to learn. You're going to learn from it. It's okay.
Yep. Yeah, yeah. So as you're going along and as your bread is rising now, you got questions. That's what the messenger chat's for. Like ask all those questions in there. I'd love to see pictures of the loaves once you bake them and see how they turn out. And even if it's not perfect, it's okay. I'd still love to see it because trust me, my first ones were not that good, but we still ate them and they were still very enjoyable. Yeah. Okay, if you didn't get the guide, I think we did. It was a Google Doc we put in that messenger chat. We can, if you don't see it in there, we can send it to you privately then if you're not finding it. But that's where it was. All right. Sarah, do you have anything else to add?
I don't. I guess I'm just curious if anyone has any takeaways or questions. We will be sending, I just created today like a follow-up questionnaire if you guys are willing to fill that out. Just because we're new at doing this virtually, we want to keep helping people. We're kind of really finding that this is very life-giving for us to like share this. And so if you're willing, like the good, bad, and the ugly, like fill out honestly how it goes so we can change it. We heard a little bit of feedback from last night doing one, and so we're trying to fix some of that too. So be on the lookout for that. But I know Deborah will say the same thing. If you have any questions about bread, about health, about anything we've talked about, or any other questions that maybe we can help you answer, we are really just an open book. Our hearts are just to help people do a little better and feel better and maybe help the next generation with this too.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining. And yeah, don't be shy. Ask all your questions, and we'll look forward to seeing those loaves. All right. See ya.